guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Too Heavy Wrestling Podcast with myself, Randy. We got Eddie, we got Zach. We're here to talk about everything going on in the wrestling world. And I don't know about you guys, but I am tired of breaking news from the wrestling world this week.
That's going to sound great.
Yeah, I can't wait for everyone to hear that.
You're welcome.
So, I know Zach and I were kind of doing the breakdown earlier before we started recording about what's all been going on this week. So I'm going to let Zach kind of spearhead taking us through that. But first, before we get to all the craziness, because we will get to the craziness, we still want to make sure we talk about some actual wrestling that happened this week.
Oh, thank goodness.
So there were two matches that we were going to highlight on SmackDown. The first one we're going to talk about is the Intercontinental title match between Gunther and Braun. And then we're going to talk about the main event between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. So let's start with the Intercontinental title match. What are you guys' thoughts on that match and how it went?
I think you know more about it because I didn't get to watch the full match, so please dive in.
Yeah, and then, so, of course, we talked about it last week and what we thought that the Royal Rumble was going to bring for Gunther before, and Eddie, you were bringing up the fact that you thought Braun was going to be, next in line for the title. It looked like they were pushing him big for it, and they made this match make it look like he was actually going to take that title. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely looked like... well, that's the thing. They've been doing this with so many of Gunther's Intercontinental title matches, because they did it with Ricochet, they did it with Rey Mysterio, now they did it with Braun. Like, they do a really good job of making me think, oh, this is going to be the one. This is where he loses it. And then he doesn't. Now, during the Ricochet and the Rey Mysterio one, there was an interference. There was an interference with the Ricochet one, right? I don't think there was.
So, no.
But the Gunther one, we actually did get a bit of Imperium involvement this time.
Yeah.
So.
And the biggest thing I wanted to say about this, because Braun, he gets the flack because he's the big guy and he can't have as versatile or dynamic matches, but I had to honestly say this was probably his best match of his career.
That's bold. Of his career? He won a 50-man Royal Rumble once. You don't think that was a great match?
That was one of the single most disgusting matches I have personally ever watched.
No, I would agree with you. I think this was definitely a really good showing for Braun, and it's especially peculiar in a good way that, like, because you never really see two large men, because I consider Gunther like a larger man, not like a giant, but like to see two larger men like this actually have a good wrestling match that wasn't just like big meaty men slapping meat. Like, there was a wrestling match, like it was really interesting to see how two big men could pull it off like that.
And that's the fun thing about Gunther's matches. When him as an Intercontinental Champion has just been fun in general.
I think so.
It's been one of the best showings out of that title in years. And honestly, I don't want to see him lose the title just because his matches are different, because it's not a set 1-2, here's your finisher, you're done.
Right. They're dynamic.
His matches have finished without his finisher.
Yeah.
Like, it's not been that way. He powerbombed Braun Strowman to win.
You better throw air quotes around the word powerbomb there.
I know. Whoever's fault it was, it's still, even though it looked a little bad, it still ended it off cleanly, and it made both of them look strong, because technically he took a powerbomb off the top because he came off the top rope. Yeah. But it's just one of those things. I'm really happy with his title reign. I do believe that we are heading towards the rumored Brock Lesnar feud if he is to come back at the Rumble, which he's on the poster, which WWE seems to just keep wanting to spoil things.
You've been talking all week about how much WWE is pushing stuff for the Rumble.
We'll talk about that in a different segment or another time, but no, honestly, I was happy with this match. I really think I would like to see him hold the title until Mania, because even if he loses it then, at least we got this nice clean reign out of him. Yeah. And it's a really good showing for him, even though he was probably going to get smacked to the side if Vince was still head of creative. So
potentially, I mean, Gunther had a good showing when Vince was in charge too. Like, because you got to remember, by the time Vince left, Gunther was already Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah,
like,
but
he already had that.
Did you see what was happening the weeks before Vince stepped down?
No.
That was when they all had Ludwig Kaiser, him getting slapped around and by Gunther, and
Oh, that's right. They were
they're
doing
making
the,
it look like they were going to
split or
break
whatever.
up, and they made it look like he was going to lose the title anyway.
Yeah.
And now he's had the strongest reign out of any champion other than Roman, who, I mean, is going to have the strongest reign right now anyway, being both major champions.
At this point, minus the Usos with the tag titles, is he the longest reigning champion? Or is it Bianca?
Bianca won it at the WrestleMania. So
when did Gunther win the Intercontinental title?
Pretty sure after WrestleMania.
Okay.
Can we also just touch on the fact, when was the last time you guys were actually interested in an Intercontinental title feud? I have one in mind, but I just want to get your opinions. Has it been a really long time?
I mean, for as much as I love Sami Zayn, I was a little disappointed with his Intercontinental title runs. There was the whole Shinsuke Nakamura, Sami Zayn, and whoever they were feuding with, kind of deal for a while. But my interest with the Intercontinental title kind of peaks intermittently around The Miz, whenever he was in charge of it.
So personally, when they were in the pandemic and Sammy had taken the title, it was this Hardy AJ Styles feud, and then Sammy came back and he's like, "Well, I'm the real Intercontinental champion. This should be my title." And do you remember that ladder match?
Yeah,
that was a great match, and that was the last time I was really interested in. But before then, I'm gonna be brutally honest, because really the Intercontinental title picture for a really long time was just we're gonna throw it on the card just because it's there. Was honestly Umaga, Jeff Hardy. That's how long it's been, in my opinion.
Well, that's the thing too. There were a lot of times when it was left off the card.
I know.
Well, that's what's been happening for the longest time, is that we're getting the title matches on SmackDown, but we don't get one on the pay-per-view.
The Intercontinental title wasn't even on Survivor Series.
All these matches Walter's having, I keep saying Walter, I'm still not used to it. All these matches Gunther is having could be pay-per-view matches. They're great matches. The one that we got to see in person with Rey Mysterio, we were all flipping out because we actually thought Rey Mysterio could beat Gunther.
Right.
And you put this Braun Strowman match. I didn't get to see the full match, but I saw some clips about it. It wasn't that bad of a match. Do I want to say it's his best match? Because I'm not a Braun Strowman mark and know every one of his matches, not necessarily, but put it on up there. He did a really good job. Walter made him look really good.
Well, think about it this way, because Braun doesn't get to show much because he's either versing, jobbers off the street of whatever city they're in, or he's versing Omos, which they're literally just behemoths.
Are you telling me that match didn't get 5 stars?
Right.
Because that was a 5-star match. 100%.
But in general, though, you don't get a wrestling showing of Braun. It's always, I'm a big guy, I destroyed you, you're done.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was talking about. When you have two big guys like that, usually it's still not necessarily a squash, but it's big power move versus big power move, a couple punches here and there, and then the match is over. But this was a full-fledged 10, maybe 15-minute match.
And the fact that he sent Imperium away before the match was the nice touch. So ultimately, with this match, it wasn't perfect by any means, but it really showed off what Braun can do. I do want to see them have a match again, but I do want to see the foreseen match at WrestleMania, which I'm hoping is Brock Lesnar versus Gunther.
That would be a really good one.
Do you think that match will be as good as we think it's going to be? Realistically, you put Brock Lesnar in the ring. Brock Lesnar is a good wrestler.
Yeah.
People are unimpressed by the fact that they want to put the title on him at all times, which kind of makes him stale and kind of makes his product a little bit boring at times. But ever since he came back, ponytail, hillbilly Brock.
Cowboy Brock.
Yeah, Cowboy Brock, whatever he wants to be. He kind of switches up, I feel a lot. But I think his product's as good as it's ever been, because people are okay, make him a face. Now I'm actually kind of interested.
Well, the thing about Brock Lesnar in general, and people forget this a lot, is that when you see a good Brock Lesnar match, it's because Brock Lesnar made it good.
Yeah.
A lot of people during John Cena's career, when they talked about all of his good matches, they always gave credit to the other person.
Right.
You don't do that with Brock Lesnar.
No.
He's the reason that match is good. And so I think, honestly, the same thing about Gunther. Most of the time when you have a good match with Gunther, granted, a lot of his opponents have been capable of making sure that it's a good match too, but I think Gunther controlling the pace, making sure that all the spots get hit, making sure that he shows because he's not afraid to sell for his opponent. That's what it really is. When you go back and watch his opponents, or I'm sorry, watch his matches against smaller opponents, he's not afraid to sell for them and show that, like, yeah, they're smaller than me, but they can hurt me. I'm still going to win this match, but they can hurt me. And that's a really important thing to have. And that's something that Brock doesn't do. So it'll be really interesting to see how those two dynamics really show, because Brock, whenever he's in matches, even with top names, it's typically a squash. And even when he does lose those matches, you have to hit him with like 3 or 4 finishers. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like back and forth and then you kick out of an F5 and then he kicks out of your finisher and then you kick out of another F5 and then you finally get him. It's not like one of those trade your finishers. It's Brock Lesnar hit you with an F5, but you happen to fall out of the ring. You get back in, you somehow get on top, and then you hit 3 or 4 finishers consecutively, and then you're good. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's really how those matches go. So I'll be interested to see that match if it comes in, just to see how that dynamic and how those two play together.
Okay.
My wonder is that because Brock had been in the title picture so prominently with Roman, and it took until their biggest WrestleMania match to finally culminate that, and Roman won.
Right.
Like, if Gunther does get this match with him and win, does this ever set something up for him to then be a legit threat towards Roman in the future?
What, if Gunther goes over on Brock?
Yeah.
Definitely. I think Gunther hasn't faced Roman yet. I don't even think that match has happened.
I'd sure as hell hope if he beats Brock Lesnar, he'd be like a title contender, because I think you don't just beat Brock Lesnar and be like, oh, let's just not put him against Roman.
All right, cool. I'm just going to keep defending the Intercontinental title. No diss on the Intercontinental title, but like, if you go over on Brock, you're worth more than that.
Yeah.
You've elevated, right?
This is something I wondered for a while, and I know they've had it with Seth and all that, where the United States champion had versed the main title holder and won and then held both. But do you ever wish they did like the X Division type situation like TNA, where they gave up their title, their mid-card title, for a shot at the main title?
The only reason I don't want WWE, I didn't even want TNA to do it really, is that when you do that, especially for a title called the X Division title, when you have that, it stops being about the X Division. Like when you hold that title, it became basically their Money in the Bank. The reason why Money in the Bank works is because that's just a briefcase with a contract. It doesn't mean anything to a division. It doesn't mean anything to a group of people. It only means something to like the person who's holding it. When you have the X Division title, you're supposed to be the champion of the X Division, which means you're supposed to be the most important person in that division. It became a stepping stone towards the main title, which is okay to do, except now that title doesn't really mean anything. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a quote unquote guarantee for a future heavyweight title match. That just devalues your mid-card title. So I don't want to see WWE do that, because I don't want to see the Intercontinental or the US title be devalued in that way, especially when you have like the United States title, which up until very recently struggled for a very long time.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I don't necessarily want to see that. I think that's what the Money in the Bank is for.
I also want to throw into the play that when TNA did that concept or started that concept, do you know how many titles they actually had to throw in the picture to make the X Division title like seem lower value? And I hate to put it like that, but like they threw the King of the Mountain title in, they threw a Legends title,
TV title.
Yeah, TV title. Like there's so many titles in that situation. There's so many promotions that do that, where it's like, cool, leave us the Intercontinental, leave us the United States, leave us both the WWE and the WWE Universal, and give us tag titles. We're good. We're cool with that. There's nothing about it.
I think if we didn't have the Money in the Bank, that there would be more value to that. But because we already have that concept with this, and also it means more,
right?
Because you only get it you only have a chance to win it the one time of year, and unless you're dumb enough to put it up in a match, you can't lose it. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of where that goes. I don't really want to see WWE go into that.
They already have so many ideas where you're supposed to win title shots. It's supposed to be front in line for a world title. Like, you don't need to make a title about that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like, that makes sense.
But Well, let's move on. We're gonna go into the Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn match real quick. Because I don't think you got a chance to see that either, did you, Eddie?
I didn't, and I wish I did. That's the
Yeah.
one match I always look forward to because those two
Yeah.
guys can put on the best show of the night any single time they fight each other.
Yeah, you should definitely go back and watch this match. I kind of wish the ending had been a little bit better than it was. But overall, I mean, it was a fantastic match. And the cool part is that throughout the match, they were still telling the story,
Right.
and only in a way that these two could. Like, they were still telling the story of, this is still Kevin Owens, who, even though he says he doesn't care about him anymore, is still trying to, like, get Sami Zayn to kind of come over. And Sami Zayn was really happy, honestly, to, like, start doing this on his own when Heyman kind of told him the rest of the bloodline wasn't there that night. He kind of reacted in a way at first that was a little confused, but then as he, like, interrupted Kevin Owens backstage promo, you could tell, like, oh, he means business. He's gonna do this on his own, and he was set up to do so.
Yeah, and they always put on great matches, and we had talked about this last week, but we already kind of feel where this feud is going, or where, you know, Sammy might be starting to see where he's going wrong with the situation, or, you know, they're trying to either make Sammy want to leave,
Right.
or they're trying to make him look so bad that he's forced out. And we've seen that at the very end whenever they were just, you know, the Usos and Solo were pulling him along, destroying Kevin Owens.
Yeah.
And the final scene where he finally was throwing up the one with them, standing over Kevin Owens, it really showed that, like, in his face, that he was very heavily second guessing at this point.
Well, especially because if you go back and watch that segment, I mean, Sammy and Kevin went all out during the match because it was a match. But the second the bell rang and the match was over, like, if you go back and watch, Sammy never touched Kevin.
Yeah.
Like, only the Usos and Solo actually did any damage to Kevin post match.
Right.
Granted, Sammy didn't, like, stop them, but I mean, that's already a step in the right direction towards this potential face turn. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, you could tell in the way how cocky the Usos were whenever Sammy was being very distraught and saying, I was trying to do this on my own. And, you know, Jimmy being the one that likes him, quote unquote, that dabs him up and everything,
Right.
you know, he just was like so befuddled in his head that he didn't know what to do other than watch.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's where I think at the Rumble, like I said, it's going to be this culmination of now Roman has Kevin in his hands with the bloodline being there, and the only person that's going to come to Kevin's aid would be Sammy.
Yeah.
There's no one else on the roster unless you talk about Drew and all them, and you know, the Brawling Brutes and stuff like that.
So then, Eddie, do you think this is where Sami Zayn is going to turn face at the Rumble?
I don't know where else you can actually put it else. Like, it's got to be, in my opinion, the perfect way to book it is you have Roman fighting for the title. Roman wins. Sammy goes over to Kevin Owens, like, tries to make sure he's okay or something like that because he has genuine concern. Turn on him, book the tag team match, or book Sami Zayn at first for the Elimination Chamber against Roman. Have him lose or something like that because of the Usos, whatever it may be, and then book the tag team title match for the Usos against Sami and Kevin at WrestleMania. I feel like if you want a story to end well, Sami and Kevin need to be on top in some way. It doesn't have to be world title or anything like that. The beauty of the WWE is you can still be on top without having a world title. Stories mean so much, and the story of Sami Zayn means that much to everyone in the WWE because everyone loves the guy so much. The most entertaining person on the roster, in my opinion. So putting him on top, especially beating the Usos, is the best way to do it.
I would agree with that. I think right now the general consensus is going to be Sammy and Kevin take the tag titles off of the Usos.
Unless the Judgment Day want to beat the Usos somehow, which if that happens, then my mind is completely in a loop.
The thing is with the Judgment Day match is that it's only for one of the titles. It's not for both.
Yeah, it's for the Raw titles.
That's okay.
So you would have Sammy.
They're playing the card right now that Adam Pearce is getting fed up, so he's making them defend both.
Yeah, like individually.
But he's scared of Roman still, and he's not defending both.
I mean, I think they'll find a way to book individual title defenses between now and Mania, but I don't even think that seed has been planted yet.
Unless he makes Roman defend in 2 Elimination Chamber matches.
That would be
insane.
But I still want the Intercontinental and United States Elimination Chambers. I'm like, my heart's set on that. I feel like that'd be so cool.
I think that would be really cool, though. There's a lot of value in literally having Roman Reigns win 2 Elimination Chambers in one night.
That'd be so crazy. Like,
it would be.
He can't lose at that point. Like, you can't have him go through 10 guys in Elimination Chambers and then like have him lose to, like, that's in my opinion. Like, you can't have him lose to Cody Rhodes at that point.
Unless he comes out at number 6 both times.
Yeah, that would be true.
So that would
like,
actually,
I get to choose when I
work. That's the thing. You have Paul Heyman involved. If you can build value in Paul Heyman as a manager, as a quote unquote wise man, you would have Paul Heyman talk to Adam Pearce and say, fine, if he's going to defend both of his belts individually in 2 chambers, the only fair way to do this is to let him be number 6 in both chambers.
Universally, haven't Elimination Chambers been the champion starts first? Am I crazy for thinking that, or is that like
universally? That's not a standard rule, no.
Okay.
It's happened before, but it's not a rule.
Okay. It's either they enter first or they enter last. That's what I remember.
You've seen that, yeah. We've seen that, but like, it's not really the rule. There's not really a standard on when the champion has to come out in the chamber.
Because I think the biggest story from now until then is that because Adam Pearce is starting to show that he's tired of them running amok between both shows.
Right.
Is that he's going to try and do everything to get one of the titles off of either Roman or the Usos.
Yeah, because I guess they're going with the idea that once they don't hold both shows' belts, that they can't go to the other show or whatever.
So
something like that.
Are we having 2 men's? Have we always had 2 men's elimination chambers, or have they just been 1 men's elimination chamber and no women's elimination chamber?
I'll be honest, I don't remember. That sounds right. It sounds like 1 men's, 1 women's, or 2 men's, 1 women's.
I just want more chamber matches. I love the chamber so much.
I mean, the cool part about the chamber matches themselves is how many people are involved, right? So even if you have a bloated roster, if you do 4 elimination chambers with 6 people each, that's still 24 people represented in matches.
Right.
Versus if you have a 10 match card with all one-on-ones, that's only 20 people. So like that's one cool thing about the elimination chamber matches, is that it helps bring a lot of names into it, so you get more people on the card itself.
Right.
If they did an elimination chamber with just 4 chamber matches, 2 women's and 2 men's,
make me so happy.
Like, I would be okay with that, but at the same time, I think I would want at least 1 or 2 like singles matches thrown in there just to break it up. Because doing one after the other,
I think they would do that somehow. Find a way to do that. Because I mean, 3-hour show, elimination chambers typically take 20 to 30 minutes. They'd still find a way to put all of that on there.
Yeah, I think so too. It just wouldn't be for a title, or if it is, it's for a title that's not being defended in the chamber. So
right.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, well that kind of takes us through what's been going on wrestling currently with the actual wrestlers. But there's been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, right? Over the last week, I want to say starting Tuesday, my phone was just blowing up with one major update after another. And I know Zach and I were putting the timeline together earlier. So, Zach, can you kind of take us through what that timeline looks like now?
Yeah, and I mean, we were talking about it last week, and we were talking about how it took 3 days for the first step of it to even happen.
Yeah.
Which was, we talked about it, and it was the Wall Street Journal had came out and said that Vince, well, this was even over a month ago, but this was that he had made false judgment in stepping down, and we're like, oh, he's still not going to come back.
Yeah.
We don't think he's going to come back. And then the Wall Street Journal comes back and says, oh, he plans to come back with the 2 people that he fired. So he does. So now you got Vince, and I can't think of their names right now, but 2 of the people that he had with him in WWE before he stepped down, and he had now taken over 3 board spots.
Right.
Then you got 2 of the board members who were against him during the investigation, one leading the investigation against him. They stepped down. So now, we're kind of like, what's going on? We find out that it's to lead towards a sale of the company, and, we have speculations of who it's going to. There's a preliminary list of people / companies who want to take it. And then we get to the bad news.
Now, before you move on, how much of that was before we talked last week?
All of it, almost.
Because I think the stuff that you're about to talk about didn't happen until after last week, right?
Yeah. So, well, getting into what I'm about to talk to.
Yeah.
So, getting into this week, everyone's still kind of mad that Vince is back, whatever. But Stephanie steps down.
Yeah, that was a big move.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's seen that coming. And supposedly a lot of the talent were also very flustered.
Yeah.
We get a random post on Twitter. That's her statement. She says she appreciates the opportunity for the last 8 months that she had gotten thrown into this world of being a CEO for the company she's been with for her whole life.
Yeah.
And she's now not taking a step away, but she is going to actually resign, and she's gone from WWE now.
Now, the thing about that, because that worried a lot of people, and it should, right? Like, that's a pretty big deal. The only, like, solace that I take in that is that if you remember, before Vince was ever even leaving, she was already about to start a leave of absence.
Yeah.
So she was already on her way out the door. Not necessarily permanently, but she was already in a position and ready to take a step back.
Right.
So her doing it now, like, at the surface level, it seems like it's very serendipitous and related to what's going on. But we also have to remember that was something she already planned on doing. So just take her stepping down with like a grain of salt. It's not necessarily directly involved with everything that was already happening.
Right.
But it could be. We don't know yet.
Can I stir the pot on that?
You sure can.
Well, let's look at the other side of things and look at she wanted to leave because I think Vince McMahon had some pretty bad ideas in several different ways. He had some good ideas.
Yeah.
You can't doubt what his product, because it's given us results in the past. We've gotten to see the most amazing things, and we have nostalgia because of what he's had and what he's given to us. But right now, we're trying to go through the new generation, and the new generation doesn't like these older ideas that are kind of stale, not giving us too much, or it seems like we're getting the exact same of a lot of things.
Right.
Stephanie doesn't want to be a part of that because she wants to give this new content and be more a part of the wrestlers. And honestly, there's certain things where I like about wrestling where there's a lot of respect involved. Like, you're going to respect the boss. Obviously, you're going to respect the boss. You see a lot of interviews where people just look at him and they're like, oh, yeah, I respect him, but we don't really talk that much. Right. Stephanie and Triple H talk to the wrestlers all the dang time. Mm-hmm. That's their job. They want to be involved with the wrestlers. They want to make sure the wrestlers are happy. Yeah. Vince McMahon did not make that a priority, which you're worth more than $1 billion. Like, you probably have other things to do. Right. Cool. The wrestlers weren't happy with it. Stephanie probably wasn't happy with it either. Hits the door, finds out that he's going to be gone for a little bit, and she sees it as an opportunity to help flip things around to make the wrestling product even better. And to me, at least, the wrestling product's gotten better. I'm happy with what we're getting. We're getting great matches. We're seeing these mid-card titles elevated even more. They're getting to become main events on TV. I'm happy with the product.
I would say the most important thing about that is that the storylines are being finished.
Definitely.
That's where I'm like the biggest improvement is we're seeing the beginning and then the middle and then the end of a storyline.
Right. Correct.
So
I just think putting Vince McMahon back in charge, or him coming back and just doing what they wanted, from what I've seen from sources saying, hey, we don't really want you back.
Yeah.
And him taking that as, well, I'm never retiring, I'm never leaving. Stephanie, I don't blame her for wanting to deal with that if that was the case.
Right.
And leaves, becomes a fan. I'm just glad that I've heard not Triple H rather, but it seems like people are saying creative is not changing. If they flip that around on me, I'm going to be so mad at the wrestling product.
Well, we'll get to that part because what happens next... So Stephanie steps down, and then what happens next is arguably even worse.
And that's where I was going to tie in, because I think if you look at what we're about to say next, there's a lot of tie-ins to why Stephanie wouldn't want to be fronting the company at that point either. the one thing I was going to say from what you had brought up in our previous conversation about the topic is that in the sale process of WWE, if you think that she was doing a lot as CEO, which she very much could have been, but Nick Khan could have also been doing a lot of the day to day. And like you said, a one person CEO situation for selling the company was a lot better suited.
Right.
But going into the next part of it is that the big rumor that we were literally like curling our toes about.
Yeah, the news broke of it. It was broken
Right.
news that ended up being false. But
And we were just sitting there waiting for it to break because we kept hearing rumors, and me and you were texting back and forth like, "What the hell's going on?"
yeah,
And all of a sudden, it gets broken that WWE has sold to Saudi Arabia.
yeah,
I want to touch on that too.
yeah.
Do you know who I'm going to talk about?
Sami Zayn?
I'm talking about Sami Zayn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're sitting there. That comes out. We're literally mind blown at that point. So, I mean, in the talks with Stephanie, you would wonder why people start talking about that
Yeah.
too. Like, oh, you wonder why she stepped down now.
Well, yeah, it leads to credence because, like, if Saudi Arabia is going to own the WWE, they're not going to let a woman be in power. Like, that's just not their culture.
So, did Vince make this sale, or did Stephanie and Nick Khan make this sale?
So Vince is partnering with JP Morgan,
right?
And they're spearheading this sale. But that ended up being not true. That got debunked. They have not, as of right now, they have not actually sold to the Saudi International Fund or whatever that's called yet.
Yeah, because nothing has been confirmed. Because I honestly believe, out of the rumor mill, that the thing is that I think Vince made a closed door okay deal with them and was like, yeah, we're gonna end up going with you guys. And before this news broke out, they realized all the things that needed to go through before that sale was final, and it got messed up somehow. Because now, of course, you got news that Nick Khan has met with Disney and ESPN, and of course that there's other parties involved that are now getting in, and that WWE's semi-official statement is that they're looking into every party now.
Right.
I think there was more proof to the pudding that there was something going on with the Saudi government before the news broke, and I think something caused it to break down. I don't think that there has to be a reason that there was pending news breaking about that.
Which would be good, though, because of the Sami situation that you wanted to talk about.
We are getting the best wrestling. I'm not all about politics. I just want to point that out. I'm the type of guy who just wants to watch wrestling, where luckily my co-hosts like to talk about everything regarding wrestling.
Yeah.
Whereas I just like to watch wrestling. But this story, when I saw it, made me upset because, of course, Sami Zayn is one of the most charitable guys in the wrestling business. He tries to do so much for Sammy for Syria.
Yeah, Sammy for Syria has been a really big deal.
Yes, and I'm very upset I didn't get to buy a shirt this past time, but Sami Zayn, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm more than certain I'm right in this situation, but Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn both have never been to a Saudi event.
They haven't, no.
Because
I know Sammy hasn't. Kevin hasn't either.
I don't think
he's been on a crowd.
Because Kevin is going to be in Sammy's corner in every situation because IRL, they're best friends.
Mm-hmm.
Sami Zayn refuses to go there because, of course, Saudi and Syria don't have the best relationship. And Sami Zayn in this situation is giving me the most fun experience as a wrestling fan since Jeff Hardy, in my opinion, during that 2008 title run, or when he won the title and held it for a month, and then my childhood was ruined again. But I'm so happy that Sami Zayn's in this situation, but there's no way he's going to stick with the WWE if Saudi actually bought them.
He can't.
No,
because they won't have them.
And then on top of that, I'm a big fan of, if you make the wrestling better, you should be in power. And Stephanie McMahon and Triple H make wrestling better. You're telling me you can't put a female leader in play when Saudi buys the WWE?
Yeah, so I fully agree with that too. The thing, it's Sammy right now, and it's the fact that the woman would be completely gone. There would be no women's division.
Do you think they would get rid of the women's division, or do you think they would just make them dress the full bodysuit like they do when they're in Saudi Arabia?
For a one-time event like Crown Jewel, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Where do you see any respect coming out of any women's storyline?
I think they dropped the division, to be completely honest.
So, yeah, I mean, that's why we don't want to see that sale go through, you know?
But I think so, because if you're looking at the grand scheme of things, the rumor of that happening, I think, was the best thing to happen out of this situation.
The fact that the rumor that it wasn't true?
The rumor that it was about to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Just the fact, because it riled everybody up so bad.
Well, because it showed the fan backlash. It was like, oh, if that's what's going to happen, we're not watching anymore.
Yeah, stockholders were going to freaking completely... I mean, it was going to go public or private anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that happened. Now everybody is talking.
Yeah.
And now everyone wonders, because now news is out that Tony and Shahid Khan are wanting a WWE merger with AEW, which
I would hate that too.
If we want to dive into this, we can. This might be another episode we can talk about it, but like the monopolization of the wrestling industry is something I don't want.
Again.
I'll give it a one and done and just make it really quick, because we could honestly make a whole conversation about that. As a wrestling fan, I'm glad I have options. I'm glad I can watch AEW Dynamite, AEW Rampage. I'm glad I can watch Raw, SmackDown, NXT. I'm glad I can watch NWA Power. I'm glad I can watch New Japan Strong. I'm glad I have so many options. Don't take those options away from me. As a wrestling fan, I like seeing so many different products, because everything about everything we watch is different.
Well, the thing is, all of the things that we're getting talked about with the merger, if that does happen, they being Tony and his dad specifically said they would do it and then have a position for Vince. And what that tells me is that they would actually leave all of the WWE branded stuff. They would still have those shows, and they would just give creative right back to Vince.
That is just like...
Did they say that?
Not the creative part. That's what I'm assuming.
Don't try to throw money, dude.
But they did say that they would that they would have a position for Vince.
Did they say they'd have a position for H?
It wasn't brought up.
They're trying to benefit so much.
And again, these are rumored reports. None of what I'm saying is fact. But the rumor was that Tony and his dad said if the merger goes through and they own WWE, they will have a position readily available for Vince. What I'm thinking, my prediction, is that position is creative.
All right, hear me out. Tony sees WWE's up for sale. Tony goes to Daddy and wants Daddy to put some money down on this too. Right. Tony wants to control every wrestling entity, even though people are complaining about the wrestling that he's currently making.
Right.
Tony, if you're listening, don't take this away from me. I want it to stay the way it is.
Well, maybe that's what he'll go for. Maybe
also, don't hire Vince either.
Yeah.
Stop.
That's where the mistake will be. And I think the smartest decision, and not just for Tony and his dad, but anyone who buys this entity, and this is a little bit about what I talked about last week, anyone who buys this company, just let the people who are doing what they're doing continue to do what they're doing.
I'd rather have Disney buy them.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's
There's
the deal.
There's a lot of arguments for all of it.
Here's the deal. There's a hierarchy right now, and at the very top of the I don't want this list is the Saudi Arabia thing.
Right.
If it comes down to just Saudi Arabia and Tony Khan and his dad, of course I want Tony Khan and his dad to do it.
The bid war is honestly between Amazon and Saudi.
Yeah. Is Disney not like one of the top
Disney
contenders?
Is, but Amazon is second coming in the money war.
What would Amazon even do with it?
I mean, they
just want to own
stuff.
They just want to own everything.
They just want to own stuff.
Like, I'd rather see the Disney castle pop up every time before I watch SmackDown. Like, I don't care. I'll take it, dude.
Just at the beginning, the SmackDown logo's there, and then the Pixar lamp just comes and
can have Roman Reigns Superman punching someone, and before they fall down, Tinkerbell just hits them with her little wand. Like, dude, just give me.
Could you imagine Roman Reigns walking out with a glow stick and going, "Hi, I'm Roman Reigns, and you're watching the WWE," and he just draw us the WWE logo like they did on Disney Channel.
You can have Braun like holding freaking Mickey and Goofy's hands down to the ring. Like, just don't give it to Tony.
Stop.
There's a lot. There's just so much with it. And like I said, I don't like to get political either with it, but it's so crazy to talk about this because in what world did we ever believe that the WWE would not be owned by a McMahon?
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I think I was probably in my late teens when I started to look and assess the situation and realize, like, okay, so it's my generation, it's my lifetime that I'll see the change of head in WWE. Like, I recognized that pretty early on. I, much like probably a lot of people, just assumed, oh, the McMahon family will keep it, Vince will die, Stephanie and Shane will take over, they'll just run it forever. Like, that's what I assumed was going to happen.
I mean, we also have to look at the fact when Vincent K. McMahon bought it from, or took over power from Vincent J. McMahon.
Yeah.
Like, what? That's been 50, 60 years now? Since
Something
it was
like
like
that.
1970s, I believe.
Probably 80s, but yeah.
So we've had that product, and Vincent K made the product better. Like, obviously, we got.
Well, I mean, much to the chagrin of what his dad wanted. I mean, you know that whole story, right?
I do know that story.
Yeah, I could do a whole episode just on that.
But we saw them elevated, the people that were brought in.
Yeah.
We got to see a real-time hero in Hulk Hogan face a real-time villain in Roddy Piper. We got to see so many megastars being built because of what he's bought. I'm not trying to doubt Vince as one of the best creative minds in any industry, because I think he's one of the most powerful and most creative people ever. But what we're looking at now is a case of the ideas just aren't flowing. Obviously, I thought something needed to be changed, and Triple H is the guy who made a really low-key brand so big, and every indies wrestling star wanted to sign there.
Right.
So why not put that on the main stage? And I feel like he's doing great, and I don't want that to change regardless of who buys it or not.
I don't think anyone wants that to change right now. I mean, I said it last week. As long as Triple H stays there, I don't care who owns the company.
That's what I'm going to end this with, because just taking it with a grain of salt, because they had not the talent meeting, but they had the board meeting where, you know, they said everything was going to stay the same. And this was before Stephanie stepped down, but then she stepped down.
Yeah.
And now Triple H has this talent meeting before SmackDown, and, you know, SmackDown ran as if nothing changed, but he tried to put in everybody's head that he's at the head of everything, still creative, he's not going to be changing.
Right.
But the rumors are also that he's also out the door.
Yeah, there's been a couple different rumors that since Steph left, Triple H isn't very far behind him.
Only because they're both opposed to the sale.
Well, we'll see. I think it depends on who it gets sold to. I think if it gets sold to the Saudi Arabian Entertainment Fund or whatever that is, I think Triple H is out. If it goes to AEW, I think Triple H is out. If it goes to anyone else, if it goes to Disney, ESPN, Amazon, who cares? I think Triple H will stay. I think that's where that'll go.
I do think last point. I know I turned a really long point, or a really short point that I said would be shortened to a long point.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Triple H, I think the only thing that's really stopping him is the Saudi sale. Because I think there are some good creative minds in AEW that he could probably collaborate with. So I just want to put that just out there, because you can work with Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
You can work with Jake the Snake.
Well, and the thing to keep in mind is he's the head of creative. He's not the creative. Like, they have a writing staff.
Yeah.
You know, like so if AEW, if anything, if that merger happens, I think they take Triple H. If they let him be head of creative for all of their wrestling content, AEW will get better as a result. That's what they would be actually investing in.
Correct.
They would be investing in Triple H's experience to help the stories of AEW be better.
Tony Khan would be dumb not to pay Triple H to stay there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But final thoughts for if AEW was to buy WWE and it becomes AEWWE.
Yeah.
Is it that they keep separate products, or that they have everybody show up on everything? Or
franchise, in my opinion.
Because do we keep a Dynamite and a Rampage and a SmackDown and a Raw and an NXT, or do we move into everything's back into one?
That's such an inflated
because
roster.
ROH is also still a thing.
That's and they have a working relationship with Impact, that's too inflated of a roster. You would have to have it
franchise at
as
that
like
point.
separate entities.
Yeah.
You would have to have like basically everything would move up a level. You would have AEW and you would have WWE be the equivalent of what Raw and SmackDown used to be.
Right.
And then under AEW, you have Dynamite, Rampage, and under WWE, you have Raw, SmackDown, NXT. I truly think, though, that NXT will go away and ROH will become what NXT is. Or ROH will go away and it'll become NXT. Like, I think those two developmental, and I don't want to say ROH is developmental, but that's how AEW is doing it, right? AEW is using it as a little bit more of an introductory to TV wrestling and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think first you see NXT and ROH become one thing. Then I think you probably see a Forbidden Door pay-per-view where you have Raw versus Rampage and SmackDown versus Dynamite or something. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to see a lot of repetitious invasion angles. You're going to see a lot of intermingling at pay-per-views, but I think by and large the shows will remain separate.
Can I propose an idea?
Sure.
This is for TikTok, podcast, whatever it may be. Comment down below if you want this to be on the podcast, or tell us your opinion on it too. Let's make, for fun, and I say all of us make separate cards, we make a WWE versus AEW Survivor Series card, like they did with NXT.
Forbidden Door would be probably what it would be called. Yeah, I think that would be a Forbidden Door thing, just for the theme of it.
But like, we're gonna get so many crazy matches, and the crazy match, I'll just throw one out there. Yeah. In my mind, is you got the Usos against the Young Bucks,
or the Elite versus the Bloodline.
Elite versus Bloodline is where my head went, and I also saw a very awkward moment between Ambrose, Roman, and Seth.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. Right. Like, I'm imagining how
that's the other part I'm just going to be messed up about, because even some of the guys who weren't prominently featured, like Shawn Spears, who was Ty Dillinger, like.
Well, even go to the commentary booth. Let's get Michael Cole and JR.
Well, the thing is, too,
you know how much they like each other.
We're going to keep rambling, but it's one of those things, like, if we get Zack Ryder at the Rumble, like, he's going to be Matt Cardona.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, okay, then where's Zack Ryder in the WWE universe anymore?
Right.
Like, it's one of those things. There's too much to it, and until we see what happens with the product and everything and where the sale goes, because we could be completely out of left field right now.
Yeah.
But we have to see where things go, and
Arby's buys it.
Arby's, why not?
We honestly could talk about this forever.
Yeah,
we could.
We'll go ahead. We're gonna tie a bow on it. Leave a comment down below. Who do you think is gonna buy the WWE? I think that's the biggest question we wanna ask everyone. Who do you think is gonna be the ultimate purchaser of WWE, and how are they gonna run this company? How do they interact with others moving forward?
Best comment gets a chop by me.
You're not chopping anyone. We've talked about this.
Everyone can relate. Everyone wants to chop someone. I've done it, and it is fantastic.
All right. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to us. Zach, run us through the socials.
Everywhere except for podcast places, but we're
glad our podcast is on podcast places.
I know, but we are, of course, on YouTube as you are listening now. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, everything.
We're on Instagram?
Yes, we are.
What's our Instagram handle?
Great.
Too Heavy Wrestling.
What's our TikTok handle?
Too Heavy.
What's our Facebook?
Too Heavy.
All right, good. I'm glad we could take us through that.
But of course, follow us everywhere. Links will be down in the description below. And hopefully we'll see you guys everywhere.
All right. Have a good day. See you guys. Mwah.